So the Patterson-Gimlin footage offers us an insight into that biped that is quite unique, and there's still quite a lot to learn from that footage. As an example, Roger Patterson made 5 transparencies of that film in the late 1960s. He took it to a shop in Yakima, and he had the film crew off that first generation copy of the film take 35mm transparency photographs of it. Those transparencies are big, they're about this big, and they still are in existence, and Patricia Patterson owns them. About 2 months ago, I spent a day with Patricia Patterson. Quite a lady, and I think she answered every one of my questions completely honestly. And she did something that's never been done before. Back about 7 or 8 years ago, N.K. Davis had her agree to take these transparencies and have them scanned. And they scanned them at a very low resolution. And the reason being is that to scan them at a high resolution would take 3 or 4 hours. I asked Patricia if she would stay with me for the day and scan those transparencies at very high resolution. She agreed. We're the only group I know of in the world that has those scans. And I can guarantee to you that there's more to learn off those scans than there is off the entire film. We've been studying them for the last 2 months. I will tell you that there are some amazing things to be learned, and sometime in the next 6 months we'll come public with what we believe came off of those scans, and they are unbelievable. So that footage will stand even today after digitalization and stabilization. So let's talk about, this is a photograph of Roger Patterson that Mrs. Patterson loaned to us. Roger was a real unique guy. He was a real outdoorsman. An interesting story is when he first started getting into Bigfoot, that horse right there, he put into a VW station wagon van. Put the horse inside the van and drove around Washington with him and the horse. And Patricia said, "Oh, Dave, it was a sight. We pull up to a gas station, the people walk up, and there's a horse in the Volkswagen van." But they didn't have a lot of money, but he was really interested in what he was looking for. And he was a unique guy, and he died way too young from cancer. But Patricia still has a lot of great memory of really what happened back then, and she filled in a lot of the gaps. A great story. So, in trying to understand what happened in that Hoopa region going back 200 years, and what's happened with Bigfoot in the last 200 years, we think it's important to understand the historical aspect of that. And there's been a lot of great researchers that have dug real deep and real hard to come up with some very great articles going back to the 1800s. Well, I think we've dug even harder and with a little more emphasis, and we've come up with some things that are in tribal that I don't think you've seen anywhere. One of the things that we came up with is that there was a book that was written by Lucy Thompson. This is the cover of the book. And she wrote this book in 1916. And it's called Reminiscence of a Yurok Woman. And the book's available on Amazon. Well, in the Hoopa Project, there's a chapter in there where 2 women are driving up over Bald Hills. One of the ladies is a councilwoman for Hoopa. And they happen to see a Bigfoot cross the road in front of them. And one of the women took it as a very great thing to see, and one of the other ones completely freaked out. And she said, "Oh my God, it's the Indian devil, we got to get out of here, this is horrible, blah, blah, blah." So there's a chapter written about the Indian devils by Lucy in 1960. And it's an amazing chapter. And it talks about the Indian devil coming down into their Native American camps at night, abducting women, taking them, sometimes never being seen, forcibly raping them, etc., etc. This is in 1916. This is way before hoaxes and anything. And this is in a town called Pequon on the Klamath River, about 20 miles from Whitechapek, and the road up to Bluff Creek. This is very close. And Blue Creek runs right in next to Pequon, not far from where Bluff Creek is. So, the historical aspect started with this. And Lucy, for her time, was an exceptional writer, and she documented a lot of great things. And she substantiated a lot what researchers have done before we even got on the scene. And And she talks about the abductions. She talks about them stealing things from the camp. She talks about them sometimes coming in and trying to communicate. And she talks about them as being kind of an outcast tribal networking group that somehow is related to them, but she didn't come quite out and say it. Well, one of the things that we did find that honestly floored many members of our group is in 1926, there was an article written in the Oregonian, and 3 Native American tribes got together and they had a press conference because they heard that there was a group of people getting together as a posse to go out and hunt and kill Bigfoot. So they held this meeting and they told the press and they told the public not to go out and kill these things. And in the meeting they said that this was a tribe of people that looked a lot different than us, that communicated with the other tribes on a regular basis, that were not harmful, and if you left them alone, they would leave you alone, but they were quirky and they were different, and they would sometimes not get along with other tribes, and sometimes were excommunicated, but they were still members of each one of these 3 tribes that went and communicated with these people on a regular basis. So I want everyone to think about this perspective for a second, and think back how many years ago were Native American tribes ridiculed and people tried to embarrass them and they made fun of them. And how hard it is for 3 tribes of any tribe to get along and agree on any subject is almost unbelievable today. But these 3 tribes got together and they agreed on this point. This was in 1926, again, way before Patterson-Gimlin, way before hoaxes. So when we found this article, a couple things came to mind. First of all, it's a continued relationship between Native Americans and Bigfoot. It's a direct correlation of communication between these tribes and Bigfoot. And we had heard that Bigfoot communicated with tribes on a regular basis. And the way we heard this is in the Hoopa Project. I was advised by many of the people who had sightings that they were told by their elders that if they ever had a sighting and a close encounter with a Bigfoot, they were supposed to speak in Hoopa, Yurok, or Karuk, and the Bigfoot would back off because it understood the language. First time I heard that, I'm thinking, whoa, it understood the language. Yeah, it understands the language. It's part of us. It's been part of our heritage for hundreds of years. And then unbelievably, many of the elders said, well, Dave, we don't like to admit this, but we'll tell you that when we had small children and babies that were debilitated and we knew we couldn't take care of them, we'd take them up into the woods and we knew the mountain people would take care of them. The Bigfoot would take care of them. We'd abandon them up there and they'd be raised by them. And then there were a series of stories that the Bigfoot and the people would interbreed. And a lot of people shake their head and say, oh, that doesn't happen, that doesn't happen. Well, there's too many of these stories not to think that it's occurred. And in tribal, there's a series of stories from different tribal members across Northern California that all explain that this has occurred over hundreds of years.